As I mentioned before, today we're going to be talking about the MLephant in the room, malware detection in ML and LLM models. I'm joined here by Deval Shah, our Senior Director of Product Management here at ReversingLabs. Deval, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you everyone for joining in. We are thrilled to share some major updates to our Spectra Assure product line, particularly its enhanced malware detection capabilities for both ML and LLM models. As Dan mentioned, please feel free to react, ask questions, share your thoughts. Let's keep this interactive. My name is Dhaval Shah. I'm a Senior Director of Product Management. I lead the development and scaling of our Spectra Assure product line, and I'm excited to discuss the latest updates with you. Over to you, Dan.
Cool. Yeah, Dan Petrella here, VP of Product Marketing at ReversingLabs, and just really excited to talk about this problem that we're facing and how we can overcome it. A little bit about RL really quickly for those of you who are not familiar with us. We have the largest searchable threat repository of over 40 billion files. That's 8 times larger than the second largest. Because of this, and in a lot of ways, thanks to this, 60 cybersecurity companies are trusting RL to bolster their capabilities. We're able to analyze 20 million files a day, thanks to our ability to deconstruct software and analyze it faster than any other engine. We're identifying 3 million new malware samples a day. We have 300 global employees. We're a 5-star rated partner program. We're recognized by Gartner as a leading software supply chain security solution. And most recently, one that I'm especially proud of is we're a contributor to the Verizon DBIR report. That's always required reading for myself and my team every year. And I'm just so proud that our data helped build it this time. But let's talk about the MLephant in the room. What's happening, what we're seeing is that folks are adopting machine learning to save time and resources, to gain efficiencies, and to better collaborate with their peers. There's a list of great reasons to use these tools. I know I do. I know my team does. We're not here to say we should ever stop. In fact, we encourage the adoption of these tools. Gartner has actually predicted that 70% of enterprises will have operationalized AI architectures by 2025. AI and ML and LLMs are great, but what folks aren't talking about and often addressing is that it also is bringing in a new attack surface. Actually, as it turns out, 80% of ML models are vulnerable to code injection and arbitrary code execution. So while we're adopting these technologies, we're also bringing on an attack surface, and the threat actors, as things stand currently, might be one step ahead of us in our defenses. Today, we're going to talk about why that is and how you can get back ahead of the threat. But as we said before, we want to keep this interactive so that Deval and I can make sure we meet you where you are. We're interested to know about your ML familiarity. What level of familiarity do you have with your machine learning models? In a moment, you'll see a poll pop up where you're able to input your answer, and we'll share that with the folks on the line. Okay. Well, this is maybe a little bit less exciting than last night's. No, I won't even go there. Polls, but this is thoroughly exciting. Great engagement here, folks. Thank you so much. So let's bring the results up on the screen. Deval, this leads me to believe that we're going to want to cover the gambit. We're going to want to provide some kind of baseline material for folks to understand at a fundamental level, but also dive in a little bit more technically for the folks who work with ML models more regularly.
100% we can adapt the webinar to address all. We can see again it's kind of equally split between all the different levels. So we're happy kind of adapt the content so that it's interactive and kind of engaging for all of you.
It's almost a perfect split. All right, cool. Let's do that. Let's dive right in. So, Deval, ML fundamentals. What and why ML?
Thank you very much, Dan. So let's get started with the basics and kind of to begin with, let's look at what an ML model is, what's it's used for, and why has it become so widely adopted, right? So at a high level, ML model is a mathematical framework that learns patterns from your data to make predictions or inform decisions. Generally how it works at a high level, it's trained on a large data set. You have ML models identifying patterns, including recognizing images, predicting stock prices, and again, you apply them to new data. So at a high level, I mean, if you were to kind of see that, I would imagine many of you have like more of a producer workflow. And when we say producer, you're actively building applications and scanning them before you release it to your customers. So if that were to be the case, you would have either you would train the ML model yourself in-house, or you would get a pre-trained ML model. You would generally, we would recommend, scan that ML model just to make sure it doesn't have any malware, vulnerability, everything looks all good before you were to kind of deploy that and use that in the product. So that's got a high level uh, what the model and the flow looks like for what we call the producer workflow. Now, if we were to kind of move to the next slide, we see the real world applications for ML models. So on the left hand side, all of us, well, I hope most are using Netflix to kind of watch movies and TV shows. And when Netflix is making recommendations kind of on kind of what next movie or next show that'll be interesting to you, it is using ML models kind of look at your viewing history, kind of look for parameters that'll be interesting for you, and find relevant matches. And on the right hand side, I mean, if you purchased any stuff from Amazon, Amazon will also kind of make recommendations based on your past purchase history. So we've been seeing deployment of ML models for a long time. It's just that again, it's getting more prominent more recently. If we were to kind of move to the next slide, we'll see the rise in the AI and the model usage. Many of these logos or names will be very familiar to you. We've seen the adoption of AI and ML has skyrocketed, particularly with the rise of LLMs. So with OpenAI's ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, Google's Gemini being the more popular ones. And again, they've created powerful models that support virtual assistants, chatbots, and other services. But at the same time, if we were to see on the next slide, we also have platforms like Hugging Face that allows users to share and access pre-trained models that promote collaboration and faster innovation. But with growth comes risk, right? So the widespread sharing of the models brings potential exposure to malicious code hidden within these files, an area where Spectra Assure steps in to protect, right? So for the release of Spectra Assure, we are focused on allowing you to scan ML model files. So you need to have access to those files as opposed to kind of some of these SaaS API services. So I would like to kind of keep that in mind as we move through the webinar.
That's an important distinction. Yeah.
Yeah. So why do folks even kind of save and share ML models, right? So three parameters, time and resources, efficiency, and collaboration, right? So training an ML model is extremely resource intensive. It requires time, computational power, and extensive data. Saving trained models allow others to build on them and speeding up the development, right? And then you also have the collaboration aspect, wherein the shared model helps drive innovation and collaboration within the AI community. So that's primarily the reason, again, a lot of different organizations prefer kind of, pre-training the ML model and kind of sharing the ML model. So that's the reason we have, and kind of, let's move on to the next poll that we have. Again, we would love to understand what precautions, if any, does your organization currently take to ensure safe usage of ML models? If you would love to get that response, please do. Okay. We do have a few early responses indicating, again, no specific measures for ML models. I'm actually pretty surprised and happy. I have some people see that they are reporting they regularly do vulnerability scans of ML models. So that's great. We already have security conscious folks on the webinar. And folks have also indicated relying on traditional cybersecurity tools. So that's another good one. I'll give a few more seconds if you want to get your answers in. Okay. So yeah, I mean, in terms of kind of the responses, again, folks are either using regular vulnerability scans, you're kind of, repurposing your traditional cybersecurity tools. And then we have a significant segment of the audience that is not using any specific measures for ML models. So we would kind of love to kind of show you how we can help you over there. So let's move on to the next slide, please.
Yeah, sure. So I think we have a good sense of what these models are, why folks are using them, the distinction between API and models, and why they're being shared. Let's talk a little bit now about the attack surface that they're bringing in. Can you dive into that first of all?
Sure. So 100%, let's understand the malware in LLM and the attack surface it brings in. And for us to kind of understand that before, we need to understand a few high-level concepts. Again, those are serialization and deserialization risks. So, now that we understand why sharing the ML model is valuable, let's explore the mechanics that enable that, right? And the potential risk. So when we talk about serialization, you can at a high level think about saving your model to a file so that you don't have to recreate it from the scratch. So again, you have an object on the left-hand side, you serialize the data, and then on the right-hand side, as part of the deserialization, you reload the model from the saved file for reuse. But the security risk that might happen is, you can have formats like Pickle that allow embedded code execution during the deserialization part. And what that means is create gateway for malicious code to be hidden within those files. So if I were to take a very simplistic example, imagine you have a robot that has learned how to clean your room. You have kind of, you save its cleaning instructions to a file. That'll be at a high level serialization. When you need another robot to kind of learn how to clean, you can just load that kind of the saved file into the memory for the another robot, and the robot can start cleaning right away, right? So going back to analogy, it kind of saves time and effort by sharing models within those robots. But kind of as we can see in this diagram, you can have serialized files that contain more than just instructions. They can hide malicious code. So, going back to analogy of using robots, if you, let's say, are using USB to transfer that model over, your USB file can also have certain hidden kind of malicious files that can, send the data to the hacker, do nefarious activities, right? So that's why loading untrusted files can be dangerous.
Got it.
So
So this right here is the shareable form that these ML models take that can carry risk.
that's correct.
Okay, great. Makes a lot of sense. Let's
Sure.
dive into that risk. What can they do if they are compromised?
Yeah, no, 100%. So let's look at kind of how attackers can exploit ML models, particularly using pickle files. So, you have 5 attack threat vectors. So first one is code execution, right? So attackers can hide code that runs as soon as the model loads, potentially installing malware. We've seen instances of that in some of these shared ML models. Second category would be network connections, right? So the model can establish unauthorized network connections, sending data to attackers. The third one would be kind of creating background processes. So malicious code might run hidden processes that can affect your system performance. The fourth one is accessing system interfaces. So attackers can manipulate the system hardware, such as cameras, microphones, and kind of open that as a threat vector and kind of cause a supply chain attack. And the last one is tampering with the other files. So you can have attackers that may corrupt or alter other files, making the presence harder to detect. So these are kind of the common supply chain threat vectors that we've seen that malicious actors have been using to compromise the system at your end. Uh,
Gotcha.
yeah,
So we need a mechanism for visibility into these types of files specifically here. And you mentioned Pickle. I think that's the most common one, right?
that's correct. So when
Gotcha.
we look at the data and when we look at kind of some of the model files, we see roughly 80% of kind of the model files being saved in pickle format, right? So that's overwhelming. It's like the common format that's being used.
Okay, gotcha. So they're potentially home for these nasty behaviors. Let's do one more poll for the audience. How concerned are we about potential malware hidden in third-party ML models? And we might have led the witness here a little bit on this one, but I'm interested to hear what folks think.
data's pretty interesting so far. It looks like folks
Yeah,
are pretty concerned with the models shared on third party.
looks like we have an audience of security professionals that where at least everyone is somewhat concerned or not sure that they don't have to be concerned. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you all once again for engaging in our poll. Very interesting for us, and it helps us tailor the conversation. Um, but it's not all doom and gloom, right? Um, we know there's risk. We know we need ML. We're not here to say we need to stop it. Deval, talk to us a little bit about how we can detect these threats and how we can be more comfortable with the ML models that we're building into the software that we're providing and that are coming into our business via the software that we're purchasing.
Sure. Uh, so essentially, with Spectra Assure's latest updates, so I mean the updates are live. We offer robust protection for ML models. So as long as you have access to the ML model file that I referenced earlier, you can automatically scan them for the unsafe function calls and the unusual behaviors during serialization and deserialization process, right? So in terms of kind of the key features, we help with the detection of unsafe function calls. So what that does is identify risky code that could lead to malicious execution. And then we also overlay that with behavioral analysis. So if a model behaves unusually, so for example, initiating a new process or attempting to access system files, it is flagged as suspicious. So that's at a high level kind of how we detect. But what be super helpful is to kind of show you in reality, jump into the product, load an ML model file and show you kind of how Spectra Assure works. So if we were to move to the next slide, please. Right, we have the demo. So let me kind of change gears and move over. Give me 1 second as I bring up that slide. As a reminder, while I'm bringing up the slide, please to continue sharing your questions, comments, feedback in the chat. That'll be super helpful. Okay, I guess you can see my screen with Spectra Assure. And so what I've done over here is this is kind of what the SaaS version of our product looks like. We have the CLI version, we have APIs, and then we have the SaaS portal for it to use. So what I've done over here, and I've gone ahead and kind of uploaded a model that I downloaded from Hugging Face. It's called PyTorch underscore model.bin, and I've run a Spectra Assure scan. And again, what you're seeing over here is what we call our safe report, so Spectra Assure foundational report. And what over here, what you're seeing is kind of the issues that our product has found by scanning the ML model. So at a high level, I mean, very quickly, you can see, 6 instances of tampering and 2 instances of malicious components that were found. So let's go deeper and kind of dig through details on what these look like. Uh, so again, now going back to the policies, we've detected presence of malicious files by heuristic signatures. But let me actually quickly just go back over here. Yep. And if so, this is one of the Pickle files that I mentioned. So if I were to double click and go into the details, here are all the policies that were triggered that did not meet the threshold and kind of indicating malicious intent in terms of the Pickle file, having kind of be able to execute code, able to have network capabilities, and able to kind of create new processes. So anyone that's kind of triaging through these reports, we have a pretty detailed remediation guidance in terms of kind of what the problem looks like and what the next steps they should be taking. And if I were to kind of double click and go into the file info, you would see that again, our analysis engine has flagged this specific pickle file within the model as a malware infected file. And again, we've detected kind of issue with the serialized data. So again, we made it super simple in terms of kind of as long as you have access to the model file, you can use our CLI or you can use our portal or API to scan those files. And kind of, we provide you pretty detailed instructions in terms of whether the file looks good or bad. And if it were to be bad, what remediation guidance should you be taking? So does that sound good, Dan? Any questions on those?
No, I appreciate kind of showing this in action. This is fantastic.
Okay, let me just stop sharing and we can move back to the slides.
Sure. One moment here. I apologize. Okay. All right. I've got many windows that I have to get out of my way. Cool. All right. So you showed this before, but let's kind of double click on malware detection in ML and LLM models developed.
Sure. So what you're seeing on the screen are extensive policies that we have built into Spectra Assure. That's enabled by default, right? So if you were to, I mean, if the system were to detect you are running a scan on an ML and LLM models and will try to detect if any of these policies are triggered, it will alert you, right? So similar to kind of the earlier slide where I had those 5 attack vectors, we have corresponding policies for each of those attack vectors. So, specifically enumerating the one that can execute code, have networking capabilities, create new processes, can access system interfaces, and can manipulate other Pickle files, right? So, as I kind of showed you in the demo, we have pretty extensive policies, and if any of these were triggered, you would know exactly what the model is trying to do, and we can have remediation guidance as well. So.
Got it. So not only is our engine now capable of supporting these types of files that allow you to share ML models like Pickle and Onyx, we've also written specific detection algorithms to deal with the threats associated with them.
Okay, that's everything on this slide. So this is at a high level, kind of in a proactive AI security control. So a solution kind of helps you build secure products that meet the stringent criteria of enterprise buyers, right? So over here, you have 2 aspects where we kind of cater to, right? So you have your producer, where you have your vendors kind of building out the software, and then on the other side you have the enterprise buyer, right? So before you're making that purchase, if you're making that purchase for, let's say, the chat application and you're debating between Slack and MS Teams, you would be in that enterprise buyer category. So we again, help you, as a software vendor, we want to make sure that the ML model that you're using is kind of clean and kind of helps you pass all the kind of the security checks and your risk tolerance within your organization. But at the same time, if you have a safe and secure application that's produced, next time when you're trying to kind of sell it to your enterprise buyer, it'll also kind of help pass that threshold on the enterprise buyer side, right? So if they were to make a choice between vendor A versus vendor B, and if your application is all clean without any vulnerabilities, the ML model looks all clean, you are more likely to get approved, right? So we help you kind of get that upper hand through the enterprise journey as well. Dan, anything else you'd like to add over here?
No, that's a great summary. So, I mean, if we've learned anything from our polls, our audience might be varied. I think we all agree that we are trying to deal with risk associated with ML. One of the ways that we vary here at Reversing Labs is we have folks who are leveraging us to build and ship the safest software as possible, and folks who are using us to ensure that everything that they bring into their organization is as safe as possible. And I think this slide can help articulate how if you're a software vendor and you're building tools with ML models, we encourage you at the final build to run them through our complex binary analysis engine. We will be sure they're void of any risks. And if you're on the other side of the equation and you're bringing that in, to leverage us to make sure they're void of any risks. Deval,
So,
your
yeah,
expertise is so appreciated here. I think it's worth summarizing a lot of the things that we covered here. And first is ML is powerful, right? There's a really good reason that we're seeing the rapid adoption that it's had. It's saving time, it's enabling reuse, it's allowing collaboration across systems. Second, and this one was, I thought, especially interesting, the serialization and deserialization process is something that isn't as often talked about as are the benefits of LLM models. It's a vital process for sharing them, but it's also a mechanism that threat actors have learned to abuse, which leads us to the third takeaway. There are threats in ML. They are present. That survey showed that 80% of these models are vulnerable, and we have seen examples of threat actors leveraging it to achieve their goals. And then last, visibility is key. If you're going to be able to prevent these attacks, you need to be able to see inside of these models, understand what they're doing, scan them for unsafe functions and specific files and malicious behaviors. And that is exactly what the new capabilities of Spectre Assure is designed to do, to take in these models, to understand these models, and to make clear to anyone who is building code or buying software that they're void of any risks. Anything you wanted to add to the key takeaways here, Deval?
No, but you covered it well. With as ML models continue to drive automation, we have security risks that also grow. So with Spectra, sure, we'll continue to kind of update our kind of product to ensure your AI and ML models are safe from hidden threats. But I do like to highlight that again, this is more of the first release of Spectra Sure in that direction. We are continuing to kind of build in that. I'm super excited in kind of the work that our engineering team is doing. To give you like a sneak peek, we are actually focused on kind of building out what we call is ML bomb. So if you're using Cyclone DX, you can actually now generate a machine learning bill of material as well, which I think would be extremely helpful in having that enhanced model transparency. So stay tuned. But I do see some exciting questions, Dan. So at any point, we can always jump to those questions.
Let's do it. Awesome. Well, I love to see where folks have joined us from. It seems like we're pretty widespread, as is the use and issues associated with ML. The first question that's come in is, does Hugging Face scan the software that's in its library?
So that's a great question, Kathy. You're correct. So Hugging Face has added scanning capabilities on its platform. And again, the way I see that is, every software vendor tries to scan it from a different perspective. The one thing that I recommend is always have a layered approach. What Spectra Assure does is kind of allows you to scan any model, even the ones that are not on Hugging Face. So again, we have several customers that have their own in-house model using open source model that are modifying it and running that through Spectra Assure scan. So, we provide that additional layer of security on top of what the Hugging Face is already scanning for the models on its library.
Thank you. Next question is, license models, when it comes to securing ML API/models, don't seem simple. Can you give insight into your two models?
So Jason, I'm a little bit, if I were to understand this question correctly, I'm not sure if it's referring to Spectra Assure's licensing model in terms of kind of the pricing model, or you have a different question. So if I were to kind of, I'll make the assumption, but please feel free to either join kind of the conversation over here, or please put it in the chat, or Spectra Assure. So let's assume again, it's for pricing for Spectra Assure. So we have a volume-based licensing model for Spectra Assure, and again, depending on a use case, we can have different tiers that our team can help you out with. So please feel free to kind of reach out to us. We are more than happy to kind of understand your specific needs, kind of understand your workflow, and kind of walk you through kind of what the usage and the pricing and the licensing model looks like. So hope that answers the question, Jason. But if you have any follow-up, please feel free to let us know while we go to the next question in the queue.
Great, thank you. Yes, this presentation will be emailed after the meeting, so that one's done. Can you give a clear example of how these files will be placed into a third party?
Sure. So as I mentioned, right, so again, that's where kind of the serialization and deserialization comes into the effect, right? So as you kind of, pre-training the model and kind of, uploading that to Hugging Face or kind of any other sharing platforms, you can embed those malicious components in there. And so if you were to kind of, download and kind of, load that ML model again, you can have those malicious kind of Python scripts that can, again, trigger those malicious actions and create a whole range of kind of actions on your system, right? So that's where it's very crucial to kind of make sure you're scanning the models before you kind of bring that into your environment.
Yeah, great point. Do you support .tflight models?
So one thing I would highlight is, let me actually, so we are constantly updating our specific kind of our support format. So let me actually very quickly bring that up. so that I'm up to date and I have that for everyone. Give me 1 second.
Sure. And while you do, I'll answer another question, which is what is the difference between ML and LLM? ML is machine learning, and these models are enable you to build things like LLMs, which are large language models. That's a great question. And they have clarified TensorFlow Lite.
Got it. So let me bring that if I can quickly share,
Yeah,
Dan.
sure. Yeah,
So I want to highlight you to our doc site. Again, it's pretty extensive. We try to include everything in terms of kind of our robust coverage. And we've added a section kind of ML model. So you will have kind of all the different packages that we support. And again, we are constantly kind of updating and kind of expanding our coverage. Uh, so if you have a kind of a package or a file format that's not listed, please do reach out to us as well. Kind of, we'll love to kind of work with you and kind of understand the use case and see how can we kind of expand the product to help better serve you. So then kind of here's our usage, kind of the supported formats for our machine learning model data.
great. Yeah, thank you for that. And kudos to Deval and his team. They are a very responsive and reactive product management team. We build features based on customer feedback. In fact, these features were built on customer feedback. And so as we expand our coverage, it's from the likes of you folks that help us know exactly what to build and in what order. So please do keep those coming. Let's see. Uh, use case models. How big is the elephant? The elephant, I think, has been in the room for a while now, and we were glad to finally address it. It's big. What are other ways that malware gets into machine learning models and foundation models?
Great question. So again, you can have a few different methods. So, one is you can have data poisoning. So you can have some sort of backdoor attack. So attacker can add specific patterns or triggers which present in the input can cause the model to behave in a favorable way to the attacker. So you can have that level of poisoning. You can also have adversarial labels. So, by labeling the inputs incorrectly, the attacker can train the model to misclassify certain classes. So that's one category. You can have the model supply chain attacks. The one that we just covered in the webinar is kind of inserting malware directly into pre-trained models. And then you can have more category in terms of the inference time-based attack. So instead of directly modifying the model, the attackers can manipulate the input at inference time to exploit the vulnerabilities in the processing pipeline. So we have a few of those categories. Again, a few also are related to hardware exploits as well. So since I have many ML models that are deployed on specialized hardware, you can have attacks targeting firmware or hardware level vulnerabilities that can compromise the integrity. So again, it's a rapidly evolving field, I would say. And it's very exciting for us at ReversingLabs that we are seeing kind of new patterns and kind of very rapidly kind of brainstorming with our malware and security research to see how best to kind of stay ahead of the game and help out the customers. Scott, we
Yeah,
hope
that's
that answered the question.
Thank you. Yeah, you let us know if you have further questions, but you touch on a good point, Deval. We want to talk about this not because we want to slow people from leveraging ML models, LLMs, AI, whatever term you want to use. In fact, we want security to enable your business. We want you to have those go hand in hand. And that's what this is all about, is getting comfortable with them and getting a mechanism in place that allows you to comfortably build with these types of models and bring them into your organization for all the benefits that we mentioned before. Still time for more questions if folks want to ask them now. And while I do give you that time, I want to talk about some additional insights and events from Reversing Labs. We like to keep a steady stream of content coming for you. The next one on November 14th will be Yara Rules 101. Learn to write and use high quality rules for threat hunting and detection. You'll have Paul Roberts, our Director of Editorial and Content. You'll have Laura Dabelich, our threat analyst at Reversing Labs, and Daniil Panachet, our solutions architect at Reversing Labs. Additionally, the following webinar on November 20th, really excited about this one because we actually have IDC research manager DevOps and focused on DevOps and SSCS, Katie Norton from IDC joining us, where she'll be exposing software supply chain weaknesses. And it'll be her and I actually covering some research that they've divulged and what to do about this growing threat of software supply chain security. We also have a virtual event on November 21st, the Global Perspectives on Software Supply Chain Security, exploring current and emerging regulations in the US, UK, and EU, featuring insights from the National Cybersecurity Center as well as PwC. And last but not least, we want to thank you for attending. We want to thank you for our engagement. We encourage you to follow us on social, LinkedIn, YouTube for more content like this. Share this session if you enjoyed it. It'll be all available on demand. Folks, again, thank you so much, Deval. Thank you for your expertise and insights here. It's really a great opportunity for myself. I'll speak for myself to get to hear from an expert like you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, folks.